This is Electric Universe Eyes, and today I'm going to narrate a paper titled History of Electric Geology, written by Larry White, independent arc blast investigator and photographer, Antelope, California, USA, and Robert Hawthorne Jr., undergraduate, School of Science, Mathematics and Engineering, Salt Lake Community College, Salt Lake City, Utah, USA. Abstract: Electric geology is considered the study of rocks generated or altered by past or ongoing electrical processes, resulting in present-day rock formations with telltale signs of very strong electrical processes at work. Since 1950, with the publishing of the controversial book Worlds in Collision by Immanuel Velikovsky, proponents of his theories have conducted field investigations for evidence in opposition to what is considered the more standard or conventional geophysical processes with a slower electrical valence transfer of charge considered in normal crystallization and weathering processes. Michael Steinbacher, a most excellent photographer, was an Electric Universe devotee during the early formation of the Thunderbolts team. He is credited as an original investigator of the arc blast phenomena, who first began a series of extensive field investigations, first posting to the Thunderbolts forum in 2008. Arc blast is generally considered an extreme event of the electrical geological process whereby interplanetary lightning or static electricity is considered the causal agent of large planetary scale electric geological processes. Hypotheses on what triggers an arc blast vary, but may include wandering interstellar objects that transfer charge directly in passing, a plasma event triggered from the sun, shifting orbits changing electromagnetic potentials, discharge during impacts or collisions, increased charge density of surrounding interstellar space, etc. The end result is a planet scarred by electric carve-outs during extreme plasma tectonic events. Introduction: Electric geology signs are posted in many places, including the Great American Southwest Desert for those using their, quote, electric eyes to see the telltale evidence of violent electrical discharge processes at work. The Diocotron Instability image in plasma physics is distinctly reflected in the upheaval dome image. What processes formed this geological feature? The two competing conventional theories advanced for creation of the upheaval dome structure are considered as either a pinched-off eroded salt dome or a complex meteorite impact crater. Our electric eyes lead us to a more palpable conclusion considering an electric discharge hypothesis that goes back to claims by Immanuel Velikovsky, i.e. that events within our solar system affecting the orbital configurations of our planets may have triggered extreme electromagnetic disturbances among them. Electric discharge hypothesis of upheaval dome. The genesis of upheaval dome, chevron structures, and arch formations could have simple electric universe explanations. Upheaval dome was likely created originally as a blister on Earth's surface caused by an electric arc filament separated from the main arc current, which goes to ground. A geological example of a Diocotron instability demonstrates how this effect could simply be mirrored at planetary scale when applied to upheaval dome genesis. An original investigator of the electric geology, Michael Steinbacher, was extremely interested in upheaval dome because of the conflicting explanations. It's still considered a mystery by conventionalists. For Michael, there was nothing like a mysterious puzzle that could possibly be explained electrically. He saved up for an airplane rental to take this great shot portraying a similar Diocotron instability structure in this image. Did we mention Michael was a photographer? Also, an interesting mineral found near upheaval dome called analcime has perplexed most conventional geologists. Analcime derives from the Greek word analkimos, meaning weak, for a weak piezoelectric force present when rubbed or warmed. The Greeks had similar power stones, and analcime is reportedly used for restoration of mental clarity. The Velikovsky affair. In 1950, a book titled Worlds in Collision, written by Immanuel Velikovsky, suggested the unorthodox theory that Venus was a comet recently trapped in our solar system, and that event caused many electromagnetic phenomena to occur. Sometime after being labeled an academic heretic, some of his predictions had been reported as accurate. The book, The Velikovsky Affair, Scientism versus Science, states, quote, In October 1953, Velikovsky was asked to address the Graduate College Forum at Princeton on the subject. Worlds in Collision in the Light of Recent Finds in Archaeology, Geology, and Astronomy. In the course of this address, in which he was able to cite many items in support of his thesis among discoveries made since the appearance of worlds in collision, Velikovsky suggested that the Earth's magnetic field reaches sensibility as far as the Moon and is responsible for certain unaccounted-for libratory, or rocking, movements of that body. He also suggested that the planet Jupiter radiates in the radio frequency range of the spectrum, end quote. Worlds in Collision mentions Albert Einstein engaged Velikovsky during this controversy. The book states, quote, from about the time of 1953 forum address through 1954 and into 1955, up to the time of Einstein's death, he and Velikovsky carried on private debate, oral and written, on the issue of colliding worlds and the merits of an electromagnetic solar system. Einstein remained adamant in his conviction that sun and planets must be electrically neutral and space must be free of magnetic fields and plasma. Yet when he learned only days before his death that Jupiter emits radio noise, as Velikovsky had so long insisted, he offered to use his influence in arranging for certain other experiments Velikovsky has suggested, end quote. What transpired from the Velikovsky affair caused a chain of events to occur leading to what is known today as electric geology. This paper will provide a chronology of those events, along with theories and some evidence of the pioneers investigating electrodynamics and geophysics, as well as where electric geology is headed and what that can offer to our collective understanding. Thunderbolts. Who started electric geology? Well, we can blame Michael Steinbacher, who started posting about the subject on the Thunderbolts forum back in March 17th of 2008. See thunderbolts.info/WP. Michael was always intense, but self-deprecating, funny and charming, and at times could have a snarky response. For instance, here's a quote from Michael that he posted in response to a critic touting glaciers as an answer. Quote, hello, the blank. I'm not denying that glaciers played a role. On the other hand, what appears to be scraping by glacier could be electrical erosion. Normal geologists would never consider this, only fake geologists like myself, end quote. He wanted to know how the mountains came to be and traveled west to find out. He learned about the western mountain ranges by actually going there and staying as long as he needed. He began to see patterns that made sense with what he considered his dune hypothesis, or reverse duning, where sand dunes became fused rock or lithified. Michael used this process to explain many types of what he considered electrically fused rock formations regardless of rock type. In most cases, he was generally referring to, quote, welded tuffs or lithified volcanic ash, but considered the possibility that other rock types may have undergone similar processes. His ideas also included, quote, sloshing, meaning huge floods were happening in conjunction with the huge plasma events. Most conventional geologists have not yet considered this combined effect, and he saw many strange formations that seemed unexplained with the conventional ideas. As Steinbacher was an electric universe devotee in the early days of Thunderbolts group formation, he just wanted the group to acknowledge evidence he had gathered on electricity and plasma events on our planet by reminding everyone of the examples right here on Earth that the group could easily view. The Electric Universe Thunderbolts group is more focused on outer space. They encouraged the, quote, standard space sciences to acknowledge electricity and plasma as much more important considerations than current models support. Valles Marineris on Mars in the American Southwest. Wallace Thornhill, co-founder of the Thunderbolts Project, hosting Electric Universe conferences, espouses the arc blast concept in an interview with Robert Hawthorne. Thornhill discussed how electrical scarring is visibly noticeable on both the surfaces of the American Southwest and Valles Marineris on Mars. Thornhill describes, quote, Valles Marineris is fairly easy because it's got a central area that is really ripped out, and then the whole thing has the shape of a barred spiral, with a curve up this way and a curve down that way. It is a spiral, end quote. He then states, quote, a discharge draws current laterally in the form of a coronal discharge, so you see this all over the place here, which are obviously electric arc forms, end quote, when referring to the dendritic patterns surrounding upheaval dome. What is electric geology? So one could say that Michael Steinbacher started the electric geology idea during the period that the Thunderbolts group formed, though the name came later. In 2008, Steinbacher started posting on the Thunderbolts forum and did so until he passed in July of 2015. He helped create a website, see www.eu-geology.com, which is still maintained to this day, although he was not using the electric geology name quite yet. Here is what he posted on September 11th, 2010. Quote, "One of my great frustrations is not being able to share this in person with others while I roam the great deserts of the western U.S. I invite everyone to join me. Come to me, or I'll come to you. Every mountain is an open book. The less vegetation, the better. Death Valley sings. I'll travel anywhere. I have strengths that are equaled by weaknesses. I need help. This is an open invitation to everyone with an open mind." End quote. He finally realized his dream of guiding groups to his special places, where electrical explanations were considered the most obvious. At some point after 2012, we started using the term, quote, "electric eyes," for folks that understood the concept and could spot possible anomalies in the field, and at this point he felt the name electric geology could and should be used. Michael investigated Upheaval Dome and seems to be one of the first investigators to follow up on the electric discharge hypothesis with field investigations of electric geological processes on Earth's surface. One appeal of the concept is it may easily explain some problems in plate tectonics, such as 1. The power needed to thrust up mountain ranges is difficult to justify with simple mantle convection or upwelling as a driver. But a short north-south global mantle circuit during an electric discharge should have the necessary power for uplifting north-south mountain chains, for example, the Andes and Rockies. 2. The relatively young age of the seafloor, stated as less than 200 million years by plate theorists, relative to the ancient age of continents up to 4.5 billion years, may be more easily explained by a recent melting of the lithosphere during electrical carve-outs of global ocean seafloors from a series of electrical discharge events which reset the magnetic ages by reaching Curie temperatures, i.e., resetting the magnetic age during recrystallization. 3. It also could make sense the asteroid belt is remnants of Earth's blown-out crust and mantle if the Earth-Sun system is considered as a stellar transformer, with a few blown circuits. Field evidence. Nonconformity occurs when sedimentary rock is lying on metamorphic rock. The contact between them is recognized due to the different structure of both the rocks. The igneous or metamorphic rock will not be in layers, whereas the sedimentary rock is layered. The close examination of the layers enables recognition of the difference between them. Lack of contact metamorphism in the sedimentary layer generally indicates the sediment was deposited after and over the metamorphic event. This central berm is one of 3 spilling down from a large hill. The outside berms are composed of dirt and gravel only, although it appears this berm has been electrically zapped. Our electric eyes tell us that this is likely a fulgurite caused by a lightning bolt, but our geologists said the cause was, quote, "the San Andreas Fault that lies 3 miles distant," end quote. Metamorphism requires great heat and great pressure, and so the standard geologists posit that all metamorphic rocks must have been buried at great depth and then lifted up and eroded out. 20 to 30 miles deep is often mentioned. Most conventional geologists have not really studied electrical processes, so we jokingly call that process, quote, "the magic elevator theory." Electric currents can heat many things to extreme temperatures, but understanding how this same current can compress objects with incredible pressure through the Bennett-Z-pinch process, causing an electrical transmutation of elements, seems a productive line of research. The Z-pinch is studied at Los Alamos most famously. What are some examples of electric geology? There seems to be some hint of electric universe co-rotating energetically, double layers exposed in this geologic section. Possibly the Arches National Park and natural bridges are both caused by erosion, but the arch we saw on the north side of Long Canyon might be more difficult to explain by erosion. The arch pre-exists any erosion and is embedded laterally within the geological unit. The arch in Figure 8 forms in a thick sequence that looks like the Wingate Sandstone, an Aeolian airborne deposit sitting on top of Chinile Formation. a silt mud or clay lake deposit. Water was likely present in the sandstone aquifer layer where the central hole is located within the central arch and where large electric currents propagated above the clays along the wet sandstone aquifer. Figure 9 show these lateral arch formations are extensive formations throughout the Canyonlands National Park and beyond. Extrapolating this idea to the larger interplanetary lightning scale envisioned leads to the possible conclusion that if ocean basins were carved out by this process, sending the seafloor into orbit as asteroids, then very likely the magnetic signatures of mid-ocean ridges are the product of a lateral, co-rotating Birkeland current, not the product of a seafloor spreading as proposed in the plate tectonic paradigm. In other words, the magnetic stripes on the seafloor are a lateral cutaway view of the double layering effect. Thus, the remnant sandstone arches within Arches National Park could have been formed electrically. Robin Andrews writes in Forbes on Fulgurites, quote, "Lightning is ludicrously energetic, with the average lightning strike estimated to involve 1 billion joules of energy. With that kind of energy and with temperatures exceeding 2,500 degrees Celsius, you'd expect that it can do some damage to pretty much whatever it ends up striking," end quote. Andrews later adds, quote, "Despite the sudden temperature spike, the targets do cool off relatively rapidly, which means that the melted minerals don't have much time to rearrange themselves. This normally means that the texture of these once melted segments is often amorphous and glassy," end quote. The example was formed on Chandelier Island, Louisiana, and found in several states of erosion. Some were flat as pancakes, some had small knobs on the surface, some had more extensive arch formations in various states of erosion. The best find was a newly formed fulgurite with complete and intricate loop systems on the surface, highly crystallized and vitreous. The sample was given to a local teacher in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, who was attending the field trip. No pictures available. Although we did not actually see the lightning strikes from these fulgurite rocks, the process has been demonstrated experimentally. Generally, fulgurites appear as hollow tubes penetrating the ground, but in the case of a beach environment, the saltwater table underneath the sand may spread the energy laterally to a higher degree than normal. Fulgurites giving the energy time and space to create the arched, frothy features at the surface. Erosion is also an important factor in destruction of these formations, but can also create arches when underground river cavern systems become exposed at the surface. Although the arc blast explanation is speculative and the scale is very different, the underlying logic appeals to a common sense approach. Anomalies in the 922 Canyon in San Rafael's. Within the eroded Navajo sandstone of the San Rafael Swell, we found geological anomalies in the 922 Bureau of Land Management, or BLM, Canyon, north of the Goblin Valley that very likely indicates the occurrence of an electrical event. Two specific features that stand out are the Dragon's Egg and Slot Canyon. The Dragon's Egg feels like a piece of pottery. When lightly thumped, it has a slight ringing effect like a fired ceramic dish. Andy Hall in foreground with backpack inspects the co-rotating layered object in line with the stem or core of the feature, following the arch in the Navajo Sandstone formation. Larry White is taking close-up photos of the core of the Dragon's Egg. What force would create pottery-like arched sandstone structures? How does erosion create these internal structures that weather out? Does some type of secondary replacement mineralization occur that hardens these arched-shaped structures? Electric currents are known to fuse quartz in vitreous lightning rocks or fulgurites. Andy Hall stated in his article, quote, "Arc blast is the consequence of arc flash in a surface conductive current discharge," end quote. He explains this statement earlier in the article, quote, "Earth acts like a gas giant, integral to the circuitry, with current flowing through as well as around it, but Earth's current flows in a liquid plasma, the molten magma below the crust. In the event the system is energized, current discharges from within. The evidence is in the extensive volcanism on Earth. Volcanoes straddle subduction zones at the edges of continental plates, rift zones, and mid-ocean ridges. They betray the flow of current beneath the crust," end quote. Could this be the case for the Dragon's Egg pottery? Does a Bennett Z-pinch also cause dragon's eggs? Can geodes also be some similar version of these processes? We did find a row of dragon's eggs high on a ridge. A drone will be necessary to further investigate them. Slot Canyon, a lightning process? Interesting evidence was found in what we called a slot canyon. Could the canyon have been excavated electrically? As Larry and Bruce walked up the slot canyon, approaching a circular termination feature at the end of the canyon, they examined the very narrow floor of the canyon. The bottom of the canyon looked to be cut very straight. It had a very pronounced, nearly vertical cutaway at the base with rough walls of angular texture. These are not general characteristics of erosional processes, but could indicate an electric arc blast process, especially in light of what we found at the end of the canyon. The slot canyon termination in Figure 12 was incredibly a frozen liquid, quote, brown ooze. It dripped stair-step down the canyon termination, then solidified. This apparent mystery indicates some intense heating at the canyon termination in line with the slot cutaway. The white country rock surrounding the brown ooze exhibits a vitreous fused nature with globular surface mineralization. Rock lightning. The author saw this beautiful rock with a Lichtenberg pattern near Mount Whitney. The conventional explanation of these quartz intrusions is that geothermal waters transporting silicate solutions into cracks in the native rock causes them. It seems we may need a better explanation for quartz veins in general. What do electric eyes see? What can electric eyes say about the picture above? Notice these quartz intrusions mostly go from top all the way to the ground, as if they could be continuations of huge lightning bolts. Conclusions. This paper has provided a history, albeit brief, of the electric geology concept. A discussion has been provided on who the pioneers of this theory are and their methods. Some of the problems with plate tectonic theory are exposed, such as where the power for upthrusting mountain belts come from, currently theorized to be powered by mantle convection, the discrepancy of 200 million year seafloor ages, juxtaposed to 4.5 billion year continental ages, and a new hypothesis for the origins for the magnetic stripes on the seafloor caused by the co-rotating double layers espoused in electric universe concepts. Admittedly, the field is in its infancy, but this paper has attempted to display through a common-sense approach that massive geological formations may be formed through electrical processes. This field is just starting. The name is only a few years old. I hope all of you will look around your own homelands with electric eyes.